And those were the issues that were primarily of concern to the church, as well as freedom of worship, Article 32. Because our freedom of worship in the previous constitution was a lot broader. And now we had one that was curtailing our freedom, which till now, our Article 32 gives with one hand and takes away with another. So when BBI 1 came in, we went and made our presentations at the and when BBI 1 came out, all we had was the recognition of religion as a pillar in this country. But the other comment about the church was that the church was full of conmen and fraudsters, and we needed to protect Kenyans from these fraudsters. I don't know if you remember that comment. So we took the exemption. Not only this exclusion, but the ignoring of our presentation. So when BBI 2 came, we were even more deliberate in our submissions. We indicated that if you're going to reopen the constitution, especially the Bill of Rights, you need to deal with the following sections that are of concern to us. But unfortunately, when BBI 2 came out, that was not the case. There was nothing about what the church was concerned about. We had proposed a bill. There was nothing about our religious freedom bill, because we said if you're not going to open the constitution to amend Article 32, at least give us the religious freedom bill so that what we lost in the previous constitution can be recovered in this bill. So the bill was not amongst the statutory provisions, and the law was not amended. In the opening of the constitutional question, the issues of the church were not there. And so we reached out and expressed our concern as church leaders regarding this. So that's EAK, NCCK, the KCCB, that's the Catholic bishops, and the Akurino and other church groups. So we formed a conglomerate and we raised our concerns. And His Excellency, the President, actually welcomed us to State House to discuss the same. But after considerable length of time in discussions, unfortunately, the indication was, this one is 1% in Akani kama itakufa. Let me move to this one in case you're kikatika. The indication was that, Adrian, that this is it is a political process. And so, because it is a political process, the politicians, let me disconnect this one. Sorry, this one in Akufa battery.
We can still hear you okay. We are hearing you well. Go ahead.
Okay. So
the going to be an echo. So I think we need to pick the one here. Thank you.
Hey, today is that day.
Thank you. Polly.
So what happened was the issue regarding the church was completely ignored. And with that complete ignoring, then, when we had a discussion with the president, he told us that because it was a political process, you go away, let us deal with the political issue. The day you are done with your deliberations, the churches can organize their own church issue. And so, unfortunately, that is where we are till now. And so, what is the church position?
Okay. Yes,
we don't have a church position.
God bless you.
There's no issue in the BBA that concerns the church. There's nothing that has been contributed toward advancing the issues of the church.
That's okay.
So that is the position regarding what's the church position. So what do the church leaders have to say about it? Now, this is where material disclosure comes in. Because I was part of the team that drafted the report, I'm kind of stopped from telling you that the document is completely not correct. So allow me to not say that. What I will say, what I will say is, if you're reading this document, do not read it through the lens of advancing the kingdom, because there is nothing in it that advances the kingdom. Read it only with the lens of advancing political interests, because that is all that is left in the document, is political interests. That is the honest truth. So now, let me start weaving that Antu Wiwitu is be asking me, all these things that we hear, the extra seats, the extra constituencies, the extra what are they supposed to do? Now, because this is a political question, one of two things happen. One is that the biggest priority is given to what politicians want. And that is why when the document came out and the politicians started making noise, the first thing that happened is that they are the ones who are taken away on a retreat, explained to, listened to, and whatever they needed amended was amended according to how they were comfortable with. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It does.
Because again, it's a political process. So, for example, rather than scaling back on the constituencies and making the two-thirds gender rule work with the constituencies that we have, you come up with a formula that works like county assemblies, where if you don't make the numbers, you add the other numbers on top. I don't know where the wisdom in that was, but that is the wisdom that came out. The other thing was the issue about 1 man, 1 shilling, 1 vote. I don't know if you remember that argument when we were in the Senate. So part of the justification of moving our constituencies from 290 to 360 is simple. That some constituencies are so popular that when you send CDF, for example, what happens is an MP, because he's dealing with so many people, is only able to do little projects. So let's pick bursaries, for example. Because he has got so many children, he'll have a situation where each child is getting maybe 20,000 shillings in bursary. But another one, because his constituency has got 3 children, is able to give bursaries of 100,000 per child, for example. So the rationale is, using the census numbers, let's break down constituencies into roughly the same number of people per constituency, so that at the end of the day, CDF can be used amongst Kenyans fairly equitably. Problem with that is there are those constituencies who currently, even under the new formula, they don't meet the threshold. So for example, if in your constituency you have 70,000 people, that's all you have, 70,000. You don't have any more than that. If you use that new formula, then it means your constituency is not big enough to be a constituency. So what they have done is they've said, those ones are protected constituencies and will remain as they have been without prejudice. Such that in future, even if they don't meet the threshold, they'll still remain as is and they're assured of remaining as is. So I hope now you understand the rationale for why the number got to 360. Now, because of gender, I told you the formula imported is the one that was in the Senate. If you've got 360 men elected and you don't have any women, for argument's sake, then you'll have to get 180 women and nominate them and make them part of the numbers to make up the extra numbers. The only thing I think that is noteworthy is that you cannot pick random candidates. You must pick candidates who ran in the election. So you're picking the best of the losers. Now, this is good because to some extent, sometimes people are picking girlfriends and random girls and just giving them positions. So this one, you'll be looking at serious politicians who have tried to make a mark for themselves and they have been unable to just cross the threshold. So you're giving them a action. Now, moving on to the next, just starting with the next question, it raises a situation where there is potential, for example, of having a constituency with 3 or 4 MPs, members of National Assembly. Why? Because you're picking the best of the worst. Let's say in a constituency, there are people who ran and got, let's say you have 30,000 votes, that's what the winner got. The runners-up got 25,000 votes, the other guy got 15,000 votes. But in some constituencies, like I told you, people are few. So even the best loser, the winner got 7,000 votes, the one next to him got 3,000 votes. So already they start very low. So when you're picking, you'll be picking from the places with the most votes. So there's potential of some counties getting even more MPs because of this best of the loser formula. Because they'll be looking at the party, how the candidates performed, and the ones who lost with the best losing, for lack of a better word, who garnered the most votes, get the nominations. I don't know if you're drawing that line.
We get it. We get it.
So the candidates must be strong candidates, but there's a potential of some places ending up being overrepresented because of the strength of the candidacy. So, for example, let me pick like a party like Jubilee. It might be very strong in Central. I'm just trying to use pedestrian understood balance. I'm not saying that this is exactly the case. Such that you might find, because Jubilee is very strong, the Jubilee candidate would have had a very high percentage. But maybe the guy who was number 2 was a very popular candidate but didn't get the nomination. So he also garnered a very high percentage. And the number 3 was also not too badly off, used to be a former MCA. So he had a very strong showing. So you find that those 3 guys might find themselves in parliament because of this nomination process of the best of the worst. So you've won, but you're in charge of the CDF and everything, but your 2 closest opponents are also with you in the National Assembly, by virtue of that top-up function. Now, coming to the top, it's even more interesting because you have the president. The president gets to pick the prime minister. So he picks the prime minister from the party with the majority members of the National Assembly. So if it was in the last general election, for example, it would be President Kenyatta would be picking somebody from the National Assembly. Maybe what was Aden Duale at that time would have been picked as the prime minister. Okay? So because it's been picked as the prime minister, then ODM, because it is the next one with the populous members, would get that leader of majority. But if we go back to, let's say, when it was Kibaki, where Kibaki was president, but in the National Assembly, the majority members were from ODM, then you would have to pick a prime minister from ODM. Now, if you pick a prime minister from the party majority, and then that happens to be the same party that was supposed to form the opposition, then what you have to do is go to the next populous party to pick the leader of leader of opposition. The reason is because if a party has already produced a prime minister, it cannot produce a leader of opposition. Why? Because a prime minister, one, needs to be an elected member of the National Assembly, which a party leader is not. Because a party leader is running for president, so they can't run for the National Assembly. So if the most popular party produces a prime minister, their party leader would still be out. And then the next popular party would produce the leader of opposition. How does it feel? The winner takes it all? I think time will tell. The rationale is it will be spread across several parties, so that you have got one party in power and possibly another party leader of majority and of majority, so prime minister, and maybe yet another party that is opposition. But if one party is very strong, then they take the prime minister, then it means there's only one other party that's a check and a balance. One of the useful things is that they get to have a shadow cabinet. So the shadow cabinet is able to sort of offer a check and a balance, because if they're looking at, for example, the budget, and the Ministry of Finance is releasing the budget for that year, then the shadow cabinet minister can check the projections versus the information available, because a shadow cabinet has got rights for access to information and other things that ordinary MPs in committees may not have access to. Now, if it cures winner takes it all, and how does it stop us from fighting moving forward? Again, only time will tell. You can tell I'm giving you some very lawyer answers. Only time will tell. Because most of these things are based on how, as you correctly put it, how the candidates accept the results. Part of what they are hoping is that by knowing that even if I miss the presidency, I can be leader of opposition, somebody might feel that they will not entirely be left out, so they should still be fine. But because even if you nominate them to the National Assembly so that they can be leader of opposition, because they are not an elected MP, they cannot be a prime minister, and they cannot be in cabinet. So they can only be leader of majority, if that. And even if they are leader of majority, it must be in the National Assembly, for lack of a better explanation. Now, in the Senate, the computation is a little bit different. Rather than looking for 1/3, they have gone for 50-50. So that when you go to vote now, you'll vote for one man and one woman. So you are attain 50-50 balance. A suggestion that had been made earlier, which I don't know why was not followed through, was for us to scale back our constituencies to even maybe 2 or 3 constituencies per county. And then now have that 50-50 as well, such that the National Assembly numbers remain the same, but you're electing maybe 2 men and 2 women. So that they're still competitive seats, but you work in it the gender balance. But I think the wisdom became, let's just blow up parliament to as big as we can blow it, and then we move forward. So the question came through then, how do we intend to finance all this? Yet again, your guess is as good as mine. Because with the expanded National Assembly, what you do expect, first and foremost, the good thing is that more allocation will be going to CDF, and the CDF now is being worked into the constitution, so it's going to come to the constituencies and do what they are calling national priority issues. So the CDF, even how it is used, it won't be somebody building some random bridges that collapse tomorrow and stuff like that. They have to align with national priorities. But the problem is, if you're looking, for example, at an expanded 360 MPs moving forward, in terms of what that means for CDF, you're looking ballpark figure another almost 2 billion shillings going towards CDF. There's also the expanded need for staffing and office space and all these things that comes as an added cost. So that is something worth thinking about. But there's the issue also of cabinet, because half of the people who will be serving in cabinet now can come from the National Assembly. The rationale is that we will be saving money from all the CASs we currently have. The BBI also proposes that the deputy CSs are appointed by the president and answer to the president, but also they go no more than 22. So each ministry has got one cabinet minister and one deputy cabinet minister, rather than now where you can have 3 or 4 assistants. Then, with the reduced number of deputy CASs, deputy ministers, removing the CASs and reducing the PSs as well, then they might make the extra allowance to be able to afford the expanded executive. So there are people who are doing the costings to see how it's going to work. So I'm hoping that computation, the mathematics, can be made available. So I'm thinking I have answered all the questions I can see here. But if I haven't, please feel free to add some more. Oh, the thing about reggae, yeah, it's not Christian music. I don't know why they insist on equating it to reggae. I don't know, unless now the spiritual people amongst us, the prophets can tell us if there's any particular, I don't know. Quite frankly, I don't know why they chose to talk about it as reggae. It doesn't seem very well with me, to be quite honest. But
okay, let's now.
In terms, maybe it has spiritual significance. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we have pastors among us, so some of the elder pastors can comment on that. But I guess the church must have now gone quiet. So there is no. Somebody has written a question on the chat about the church. Can you read it?
Yes. But the church in Kenya from the Constitution 2010 had issues of great concern, including Caldicotts. That was the reason the church opposed the current constitution. What is it? Oh, some of these matters have not been addressed. They haven't been addressed. Ruth asked about the ending of the handshake. Thank you, Ruth. I'd forgotten to answer that. The problem is the issues that the church raised have not been addressed. What has happened is, since 2010 and now, because we have been working together as the religious communities on various issues, the church has sort of relaxed on the issue of the Qadi courts. What we did indicate, and what the president also undertook, was the way the Muslims were saying they would pray that the Qadi courts be escalated to the Court of Appeal. We said now, if it starts going that direction, we'll go back to saying that we don't want any Qadi courts at all. And the president assured us what we will have is what is in the constitution right now, but it's not going to be expanded. However, the other issues about treating one religion better than the others have not been addressed. So, for example, we had an issue with vichinjio, the slaughterhouses. How all the meat we eat in Kenya has been offered to idols, and it's a matter of by force. We don't have a choice in the matter unless tuchinjie kwa nyumba. Why? Because kila mtu akichinja, kuna mtu anaiombea hapo kwa kichinjio. And we said, look, first and foremost, that's a job that has now been ring-fenced for Muslims. No one else can do that job apart from a Muslim. Secondly, they don't do it for free. Kila ng'ombe sijui ni shilingi 50, kila mbuzi ni shilingi ngapi. I'm giving ballpark figures. I don't even know what they're meaning. But they're earning from each and every animal they slaughter. They're not saying, no, let me pray before you catch. No. It's actually charging as a service. Over and above that now, halal certification. If you're going to sell anything in a supermarket and you want it certified, you have to get KEBS. But you also have to get halal certification if it is food. And that is also income going directly to these halal certifiers. Even if your food is fit for human consumption, it will not be put on the shelves without halal certification. So there's still, and if you remember, there was when Ambassador Amina was still in the Ministry of Education, madrasas were recognized as ECD centers and are now funded from CDF. So they can use CDF funds to build madrasas and pay teachers in madrasas because it is counted as early childhood education. So there are some of those issues that have still not been resolved. The issue about freedom of religion. Daystar used to be a Christian university, but now they cannot discriminate in access, their leaders accessing, students accessing the university because of Article 32. You've seen Kenya High being taken to court because they would not allow a girl to wear the hijab in school. So the school says, no, all girls dress the same here. There's no girl who's special than the other. These are girls, there are no men who are tongoza in her here. But they took them to court and said, no, it is a matter of our right to education and our freedom of religion. So there's still some pushback on some levels that hasn't been addressed satisfactorily. Our freedom also to propagate our religion is still curtailed. Once upon a time, we had so many churches in the CBD. Right now, if you want to find any church, you have to look east of Tomboya. Ukianzia huko kunaitwaje? Inaitwa Landis Road huko chini. Kirinyaga Road, Landis Road, huko chini ndo utapata halls 2-3 Mang Hotel, huko ndo utapata wanapatia makanisa. But we used to have churches in 680 Hotel, in Emperor Plaza, in the middle of the CBD, but all the leases were cancelled. KICC will not give you room if you are a church for a religious function, even if you're willing to pay for it. So you will tell them, I want to hold a meeting, it's religious, they'll not give you. So our freedom of religion has been greatly curtailed. Right now you try to do a crusade, you're slapped with NEMA, you're slapped with what? You're given... Anyway, so freedom of religion has not yet been addressed. The issues of abortion, you've seen Susan Kihika the other day, we pushed back on one of her bills. Right now, there's yet another one that has been introduced by Milima Bona on assisted reproduction. And it's talking about the same things with another name. As we speak, part of the NGOs are trying to get Kenya to remove its name from the Declaration for the Protection of Family, citing that Kenya allows for provisions of abortion on demand. And therefore, when you talk about Kenya being one of the countries that protects the families, they're curtailing that. They've issued a statement saying that in Kenya, even though life begins at conception from the Constitution, that they only recognize life as beginning from birth. So the issues that the church was pushing back against are still very much a part of us today. They have not been dealt with. at all. And that's why we say we feel like we are being ignored when we talk about it and nobody responds. Now, how will the handshake end? The handshake ends with this BBI, because BBI is the last step in the handshake. It was supposed to, somehow sometimes I get the feeling like we are making it up as we go along, that nobody really knows what the BBI was supposed to, the handshake was supposed to look like. But the handshake gave birth to the 9-point agenda. The 9-point agenda gave birth to the action plan. The action plan gave birth to BBI 1. BBI 1 gave birth to the steering committee. Steering committee has given birth to the task force. Task force eventually gave birth to now the BBI implementation committee, Akina Junet. So it's almost like it just keeps evolving. So the hope is maybe once we do the referendum, matokeo yakitokea, then we will be done with BBI, but with the handshake. But for now, I think we're just playing it by the ear as we go along.
Okay.
So nimemaliza.
Umemaliza, asante. Anybody else? Anybody with a comment, with a question? It is 6 o'clock. We were supposed to finish around 6. Anybody with a question or a comment?
Yes, can I say something?
Go right ahead, Sammy.
Thank you very much, Joy. I also hope you can remember me have interacted with you on other areas. Now, the question is, I appreciate the fact that you say this is a political process, and indeed that is what it is, and designed to benefit some people. The issue now about the church and where we need to have been standing on is this issue of a narrative that has been underlying the whole process of handshake, BBI 1, 2, and even 3. That the attempt to create somebody to oppose it. By all means, when BBI 1 came out, you know, we were all very anxious. We were all very looking forward to it. And it came out a very mild document. And even those who had been talking badly about it looked at it and said, after all, it is not too harmful. Then we came to BBI 2. And this politics of really ensuring that somebody stands against it, so that there is somebody who is opposing. And I think this is contrary to the whole spirit of us not fighting over political issues. I'm wondering what the church can do about this. We're talking of a handshake, and if I'm not being too political, Uhuru and Ruto were the first to have a handshake in Nakuru. Do you handshake one and leave the other? Or how do we as a church, ensure that we all come together so that we are not creating building bridges that in one hand is saying we are building bridges, but the attempt is all ensuring that somebody is in the opposition. So that even if you say something little about the BBI, you are opposing and you are on the wrong. And I'm wondering where we stand as a church when all this is happening. What is it that we can do as a church? And I'm saying this because, as you said, it's a political process, and I see that's a political position that we need to play as a church. Okuru said we cannot separate church and politics. So we are seeing that this division being caused coming around. How do we as a church need to address this?
That's an excellent question. Now, to be fair to the BBI spirit, if we look at it as something to build bridges and to bring peace, when you read the documents, that's what comes through. Like you said, BBI 1, that's what came through. It looked like genuinely we were trying to address the issues of shared prosperity, inclusivity, minding our neighbors, and all those other things. And that's what came through BBI 1. I'll speak on my behalf. I was very skeptical of BBI before it came out. Then when BBI 1 came out, I actually was of the same opinion as you, Brother Sam, that, you know what, this is not too bad. It actually seems to live up to its billing as being something to unify. So when I was approached to join the team of experts to help write the BBI 2, I was quite happy to get on board because I felt I had a chance to, because I was asked to go articulate the position of the church. So I had a chance to articulate the position of the church as well as build on the other things that I felt were good about the document. And it's in that spirit most of the people I thought were working. Now, unfortunately, once BBI 2 came out, no, before it even came out, it got to a place where because of Corona, we couldn't work on it together as we used. And so by the end of it, it fell to a few people to finish it off, which is not a bad thing because we had already done the bulk of the work. So once it comes out and the politicians take over, then you realize how political a process is. And part of that is what you're talking about. There are some of the things that were introduced that even us, we kept wondering, why did you do that if not just to antagonize? So for example, in BBI 2, whereas religion was one of the pillars in BBI 1, in BBI 2 it's not one of the doctrines of BBI. So we say we recognize the supremacy of God, but we remove religion as a pillar. So we mentioned this in the president, and all happens is when he was launching BBI 2, he said, oh yeah, religious leaders told me that there is no religious pillar, and I find that a serious thing. But I assume that this is what we meant. We acknowledge the supremacy of God even in our constitution. So we don't need to have religion as a pillar. If you're talking about building bridges, religion ought to be a pillar. So the religious leaders pointed that out and said, why was religion removed as a pillar? That answer has not come through. But now to the political side where you're talking about trying to create opposition, I think one of the things that can be done, and which I have advised our bishops at the EAK, because this is a political process, it has got no bearing on the issues that the church is passionate about. There is nothing in it that warrants us having a quote-unquote church position. Why do I say that? We learn from history. In 2005, when the first orange banana one came, we were many groups that were saying no for different reasons. Women were saying no because they felt there was not enough women representation. Teachers were saying no because they were not in the constitution. They were not in TSC. The TSC was not in the constitution, it was in the counties. Many groups were saying no. So in the 2010 attempt, we realized that most of the people's problems were solved. The church was left basically isolated. So we were the only ones still saying no. But the women had gotten something, the disabled had gotten something, so everybody had been given these things we are calling now sweeteners. Come BBI, the same thing seems to happen. When BBI 2 first came out, there was a lot of hue and cry because of what had been left out. But we have seen in the last few days, everybody's issues have been sorted once again. The church has again been left isolated. So I told the bishops, don't fall into the trap of being the face of no. Because there is nothing in a no campaign that will advance the kingdom. There's nothing in a yes campaign that will advance the kingdom. The only thing this is advancing is politics. So if I were church leaders, this one, I would sit it out. And that is my honest assessment of the matter. When it comes to politicians, because they know what they're gaining or they're losing by being on this side or that side, let them do what they feel. Because in my opinion, all politicians, lack of a better word, were all born by the same mother. Siwezi kutumia dini yangu nikitetea politician fulani. Because when the interests align, tomorrow, he will leave me there tearing for him and go and handshake with another one. I don't know if you get my drift. And so the only bit I would be concerned about not being for or against is where the church stands. Because at the end of the day, we are going to pastor those who say yes. We are going to pastor those who say no. If the church takes a position, and in this one, there's nothing we are gaining. Both positions for us are lose-lose. then I would that the church doesn't say we are leading a no campaign. If people want to go and vote, yes, let them vote. If they don't want to go vote, yes, let them go and vote. However, because you need at least a quarter of the registered voters to pass any constitutional amendment, there's part of the church. Now, this one I'm giving for information. It's not a recommendation. Part of the church leaders are speaking to us saying, you know what, then I think we will call for a boycott. We deny them channels. We tell them, you know what, you will not get to that 25% mark. So how you do that is by ensuring you have less than 4 million voters coming out. But that's why you had the signatures that have been collected. People are aiming to collect at least 4 million. So that you say already, 250,000 Kenyans have endorsed this initiative. So the turnout was achieved even before the voting day. So it's one of those things where I would read it holistically. But that said, the political side is a bit nasty. But if you read the rest of the document, there are things there that are laudable. So, for example, when we're talking about national ethos, or we're talking about citizens' rights and responsibilities, when we talk about citizens' participation, we're talking about Utu and Ubuntu, we're talking about shared prosperity and inclusivity. These are topics that the church can take up and can choose to take them as topics because they deal with issues of the soul, of living with people well, of living with worshiping God, loving your neighbor, and loving yourself. So I would that the church looks at those software issues of BBI rather than the political side of BBI. Because there's some of those things that when you read it, you're like, you know what, we could use more of this. So for example, what Equity Bank is doing. Equity Bank decided, you know what, we have some money and Kenyans are going through a hard time. Health workers need PPEs, we have a donation to make, so what we will do, we look for a local company, contract them to make PPEs for our doctors. So they share their prosperity with the people around them. The way they're doing with the children for the means to fly, how they're still giving them a stipend and they give them a turn and they do the lessons. That to me embodies the spirit of Utu and shared prosperity that you're talking about. So that you can talk about somebody being like a tree, that you become big and wide. You offer shade to people. You offer fruits to be eaten that produces seed for somebody else to go and be a big tree just like you so that they can succeed just as you have succeeded. Not this where you are rich and everybody else remains poor. So I would that the church would look at those software issues rather than the politics. Because in my opinion, for the politics right now, it's not very promising. But I would let politicians handle their own issues. I'm sorry my answer has been very long, but I feel rather passionately about this. So I hope I've said something that makes sense.
No, you are clear. I want us to have the meeting back to Mr. Waiguru because of time, but it just means we might have to invite you again. So
no problem. I'll not have another meeting
at the same time. We came late. You have to admit we came to you late. Let's hand over the meeting back to Mr. Waiguru.
Thank you, Patron. Thank you, Joy, and David Waihiga for what you have taken us through. It seems we need to know much more. There's still much left to be clarified. What I was wondering whether there is a coordinated Christian body that is fighting for Christians as a united church. And if it is, which one is it? Because I saw SUP came and the other Muslim came very lately and said they have rejected the BBI. I don't know what they realized is in it. Do we have a body like that? John?
Okay, for Christians, it's a bit tricky. What we have done, NCCK came up with a position, rejecting as well. KCCB, the Kenya Catholic College of Catholic Bishops also came with that position, a very strongly worded statement at that. The Evangelical Alliance as well. All of us, I guess, where we meet together is in two places. There's what is called the Dialogue Reference Group, which is an interreligious group that now all persons of faith have representation. So it used to be called Ufungamano, but now it's called the Dialogue Reference Group. That group is still meeting, and they have been coming up with proposals, and even the communique that we gave the president, we worked with the secretariat from the Dialogue Reference Group. But over and above that, I know the Kenya Christian professionals, we're also doing something now as in an advisory role. But what we realized is, unlike the Muslims have got SUPKEM and NAMLEF as the two main bodies, because Christians, we have many bodies, each body sometimes needs to make their own statements themselves. But if you see what we took to the president, there we were a bit more united. So we had a meeting at Ufungamano, and so everybody signed up. Congress, the one led by Bishop Mishuki, the one for the Akorino, the National College of Catholic Bishops, Bishop Kiguba was there, EAK was there, the one that is led by Bishop Kepa, KCCMA, was also there, and NCCK, Canon Kenyanjui, was there as well. So the Christians are collaborating. We are talking to each other. We are working not at cross purposes. We are working towards the same thing, but maybe we will not issue one Christian position. But all of our positions so far have been consistent. And I don't think there's any religious body that has so far embraced the BBI. All of us feel that the issues of protection of family, protection of faith have been ignored. And many of the church leaders feel that the bloated, the expanded executive and the expanded parliament will put undue hardship on the people, and on those bases they choose to reject it. Like I said, because I wrote the documents, I cannot disown it outright. But because I was sent there mainly also to represent the church, I also have to be faithful to the church to tell them the truth. So that's the truth. So if somebody in the church finds that want to support the BBI on themselves, Nisawa, but I think I have been faithful in trying to shed light on it as best as I can.
Thank you very much, Joy. Gentlemen and ladies, it seems what we have is something we need to pray for a solution, and to uphold people like Joy who are in the front line so that they can be heard, because through them our sentiments can be heard. As the patron has said, surely we need to meet again, and we shall inform you when we can meet. I wish to thank every one of you for coming. Sorry we have taken longer than we had promised. We had promised to end at 5:30, but as you can see, it's quite an emotive topic. And God willing, we shall be able to meet again. It's good to end the meeting with a word of prayer by one of the pastors. I think David Geshongwa, you are there. Are you?
Geshongwa has gone.
Oh, he's gone. I've seen him in the list. Okay, we have Masunga, Pastor Masunga. Patron, do you see any other pastor who can close the meeting with a prayer?
I think Masunga is there.
Masunga, are you there? Okay. Then
Oh, if they are not there, there is a pastor called Faith Muhoro.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, Faith Muhoro, I saw you coming, Mr. and Mrs., but we had introduced ourselves. Sorry that we didn't give you time to introduce yourself, but one of you can close the meeting with the prayers. Thank you very much, Joy and David Wahiga, for hosting us. God bless you. So unmute yourself, Muhoro, and Faith of Mr. Muhoro, and you close the meeting with a word of prayer. No, you are still muted. Adrian, can you help in that situation?
Okay, touch the screen so that you touch your face on the screen. There would be 3 icons down there. You unmute by touching the microphone icon.
because I'm being tempted to ask it, Dr.
I'm there,
Kapil.
I'm there.
Oh, you are there.
I think I'm there.
Okay.
Well, you are clear, Faith. We can hear you very clearly. Karibu.
We apologize for coming in late, but let's close with a word of prayer.
Okay.
Our Father in heaven, we say thank you for an opportunity like the one we had to look through and discuss affairs that affect us, matters that affect us as Christians and even as Kenyans, dear Father, and not only ourselves, dear Lord, but the entire nation of Kenya. Master, it's clear from our discussions that there's little we can do about so much that is in the air and which is just about to pass. But King of Glory, we know there is a God in heaven, and you are the one we are calling upon, dear Father. We pray that God, where we cannot do anything about the situation at hand, that you may intervene in our place. Lord, we pray for divine intervention. We promise to do what we should do as citizens, dear Father, but God of Glory, we know, because you rule over the affairs of men, you are able to intervene. So we thank you, Father, for the discussion. We thank you for our facilitators. We thank you for all the participants. And at the end of it, we pray that God will start with Kenya. And that Lord, the enemy will not have a stronghold in this nation, but instead that it reigns. We declare that Kenya belongs to Jesus. We declare that this is your nation. And Father, we don't want our nation to go to the enemy. We thank you and we pray in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Faith and Mr. Mukoro. Patron, do you have a parting shot?
Just to say that every time we meet, we want somebody to volunteer to join your committee, because we agreed this should be a committee that continuously changes, but you can't release the older people unless we get new members of the committee. You know, in politics, everybody is fighting to go in. In the leadership of Christian organizations, you have to keep persuading. So, those of you who have attended today, if I approach you to join the committee, please know it's because the others, we don't want to keep somebody for too long. It's a bit of work, and it's good to share the work with others. So thank you very much. I'll be approaching some of you so that we can release some of the others.
Thank you. So, Kwaheri, continue in prayer. At least that you can do.
Now at least we know what to pray about.
Yes.
So Joy and Wahiga has already dropped. He's speaking in another radio station. So, but I'll give him the thanks. I'll pass the thanks to him.
Thanks to the young man who has been helping us, Adrian. Thank you very much for the technical help.
Thank you.
Karibu.
Asante, kwaheri.
Asante sana. It's like, yeah.